Well, good morning, guys. Hi, it's Brent Abel here, WebTennis, and with me today on the telephone is my good friend, colleague, and fellow Berkeley Tennis Club member, Joel Drucker. Joel, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Brent. I'm good.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending some time this morning, and I talked to you, and we sort of exchanged some emails the last few days about this show that I saw on TV recently. It's one of these TED Talks series, which I think are fantastic. And one of them was by a guy named Tim Harford. And the title of it was The God Complex. And I want to talk to you today, Joel, about, a couple of things. Number one, about, us as teaching professionals or the teaching professional industry, in sort of how we sort of take on this God complex in terms of trying to teach people and telling them that we have the answer for them, and that all they have to do is listen to us and simply apply it, and they've got it. And sort of that God complex to me means more like, well, there's only one way to do it. And, here's the cost of that one way of doing it. And, I remember working with Mr. Stowe back in the day, and really what I loved about him was, him saying, look, here are the fundamentals, and what I want you to do with the fundamentals is basically, I'm going to interpret them for you, but I want you to go out there, trial and error, and sort of tinker with them, experiment, test, and see what really works for you. And then once you get these fundamentals down, I want you to lay your own personality down on top of them. So Joel, the first thing I want to talk about today is that, and then the second thing I want to talk about is what the title of our PDF presentation here is. How do we handle unforced errors in matches? So, can you kind of respond to what I just said about this God complex in terms of us tennis pros?
Well, I think one of the problems that both the teaching pro and the student have is a sense that learning how to do something better in tennis, particularly a stroke, is a matter of data transfer. That this guy has an answer, I got a problem, you got the answer, pass it on to me just like you would come and fix my bathroom or fix my car. And it's not as simple as that. It takes a lot of learning and understanding, and I think the best teachers understand that it's really about the student and getting inside the student's head and the student processing in the way they do. And as we both know from just six people we know, some people drill and some people like staring at the backboard and some people like looking inside a mirror. There's a lot of ways to kind of absorb this information.
Well, I think the point I want to make on this first topic that we're talking about is that the responsibility really has to be on the tennis professional to, number one, educate the student that at best the tennis pro is worth about 25% of the actual learning process, and they really have to impress upon the student that that's the reality of it. And they've got to really try to motivate and design a practice program that will allow the student to fail successfully. And I think that's one of the big problems that tennis players have in terms of really being able to improve upon, as you say, a stroke or even a strategy, is that there's just not enough encouragement. That there's really some great ways to make mistakes. You've really got to embrace this kind of failing process, and really encourage students to do that more often.
And failing is learning. It's whatever failing is. I don't even know what failing is. I mean, it's just another way of learning and absorbing more insights into a player's game. I was talking once with Brad Gilbert, and he noted when he started on the tour, he was amazed at the number of guys who would win matches and come off the court saying, God, I didn't do this well, I didn't do that well, I didn't do this well. And he's like, geez, you just won a tough one, 3 and 5, and why aren't you looking at what you did well from that to take some building blocks and use that as a building and say, yeah, and then how do I make this better, and how do I make the thing that works well work well? There's just a lot of negative energy that can get transmitted.
Well, I guess the point I want to make here, Joel, is I really want to encourage anyone who's listening that, it's so easy to get frustrated when you're working on something and trying to improve upon a stroke, for example. It's so easy to get frustrated when it's not going right. It's easy to get pissed off, and it's really easy to get embarrassed, if someone else is there watching. And one of the things I loved about working with Mr. Stowe is that it was always done on this junior high school court in Napa, away from everybody. No one could actually see what was going on. So there was really the freedom there to be able to feel that, I could miss for the entire day, and if I hit one just right, that was really the whole process of failing was really kind of a success on that day. So, I encourage anyone who's listening that the only way that you're going to figure out how to get better at something is through trial and error. You're going to tinker, you're going to experiment, you're going to test, and you're gonna, you're just not going to get it for a long time. But the process of getting there is really all about trial and error.
Well, it's just the fun in trying it. I mean, yeah, I think what you said at the junior high sounds like the Manhattan Project, and that's okay. I mean, it's all right to do it around people too. I mean, it's just learning. At if people who at a certain point, who cares what other people are thinking while someone's trying to learn and enjoy the game and derive pleasure from growing and trying new things. I think the big part, you're right, Brent, about the 25% has to do with the homework part. I would like to see a teaching pro say to every student, look, for every hour I give you, none of this is going to really hold unless you put another 2 to 3 hours of homework into it, whether it's a practice or a drill, or you play a match and you say, okay, in this match I'm going to attempt to apply this thing. I'm going to come to net twice a game, or some process-based things that help us continue to hone our skills.
All right, JD, let's move on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is, is what the title of this topic is. What do we do after we make an unforced error? And I think one of the big problems is that when we make an unforced error, we miss an easy shot. We miss a ball that, for all intents and purposes, the ball's just sitting there and there's really no reason to miss it. And I think that the first response to missing that shot really is going to set us up for learning what to do the next time, or for really inhibiting the learning process. And I'm as guilty as anyone on this, Joel, where if I miss an easy ball, make an unforced error, it's really easy to get pissed. It's easy to get embarrassed. And, you lose confidence when you do that. And I think that you don't look at that unforced error as an opportunity for learning. I don't think that you really improve your game. And come on, the reality is that we are all going to make unforced errors for the rest of our lives, no matter how good we get. I mean, you look at the greatest players of all time. Are you telling me that they finally mastered the game to where they stopped making unforced errors? No. So, talk about, what happens here, Joel, maybe from your own experience as a player, or what you observed in others in the pro tour or others at the club level, when they make an unforced error and they go into that negative thing, what happens to that player at that point?
I think the first thing, look, let's concede that the first thing, whether you're Roger Federer or a 2-5 at the club, the first instant thing is a little bit of upset, like a millisecond of upset. And everyone's going to feel that initially. And then I think the question is, okay, now I have a choice. Now I can kind of let it become an infection, or I could just stop it. And I think the better a player becomes in their maturity, not necessarily the better they become as their playing level, but the more mature a competitor and student they become, the less they create that negative energy. The negative energy, I think, is an indulgence, is a way of creating a buildup of tension and anger that then creates a story, and I wasn't playing well, and it was a bad day, and all this stuff that creates a story and a reason not to let one compete. I think the best way to treat it is business. Okay, I missed one. Okay, next point. I mean, it's almost like some of those rituals we've discussed before about like a football team. Okay, I got sacked. Now it's 2nd and 14. Let's go on to the next play. And tennis players, because we don't have a team around us to kick us and slap us and talk to us, it can really fester in your mind. And actually, that's a great thing. We all know when we're playing someone and they're starting to get angry, we know they're starting to unravel. And if we can just stay focused. So the best bit players, they don't show anything. They're just poker-faced. Okay, I missed a shot. On to the next one, and kind of enter that kind of cognitive, thoughtful, positive positive energy. And I think every player needs to find their own ways to create good positive energy for themselves, whether it's a mantra or a little song in their head or some way of just creating some nice positive rituals. And you and I have talked about this, Brent, about how the real thing that affects competition is how we manage our energy in between points. That is so important.
Well, let's do this. I want to go to the next page, which is we're going to kind of give a solution to this problem of how we respond negatively when we make an unforced error. But before we do that, Joel, can we kind of throw around a little bit a definition of how trial and error, how that process of learning works? What's your take on that?
Trial and error, I think it's fantastic. I think the whole point to trial and error is to try things and acknowledge that errors are part of learning too. I mean, it's just part of the whole learning process of not so much measuring success by success. So if we're working on something, let's say like a new approach, a technique, it's the times we're trying it, and even missing it is a form of learning it. And that's just part of the game. That's just part of the whole learning process. There's a shot that you've helped me on lately, this foreign approach shot, and a friend wrote to me, he says, I've tried that shot, but I haven't had success with it yet. And I thought, well, what's success? Success is letting myself try it.
Right.
Letting myself try it and go out there and hit it dozens and dozens of times. And of course it's more success when I make it. Of course it's more success when you beat the guy you don't usually beat. We get that. But why don't we just let ourselves build? I think all this stuff about positive energy is so important, how we learn from our wins, what we did well. And so I think trial and error, trial and success, trial.
Yeah, I think I go back to when I was learning, when I was changing my game with Tom Stowe, and how he sort of encouraged me to take what he was teaching me, take his interpretation, and kind of fiddle with it a little bit, and sort of try to make it into my own words. And there was a lot of trial and error. I mean, I was basically trying to work on a specific fundamental or a sequence of fundamentals that he was giving to me, but the trial and error process for me was much more about, well, what words or what feels, quote unquote feels, am I really trying to tinker with? Am I trying to test? Am I trying to go through a trial and error process that really makes sense to me? And I think that's really where we can apply the trial and error process to our tennis strokes and to our tennis strategies, is trying to intellectualize that, yeah, there is a fundamental that we want to understand, eventually that we want to master and get good at. But the trial and error process is more, how do you internalize it? How do you interpret it? What words, what phrases, what feelings, really work for you? And I think if you don't go through that trial and error process in a positive way, that in terms of saying, all right, well, this one didn't really feel quite right. Well, these words didn't really work quite right for me. I'm now going to try something else, and I'm not going to worry about if that doesn't work for me, because eventually, and I think you've got to have this in the back of your mind, you have to trust that eventually the trial and error process is going to get you to where you want to be. And
you have a faith that you're learning, that you're working on things. I remember once a few years ago, a friend and I were playing, and he was getting really worked up and upset, and it was missing, and nothing was clicking, and he started to get angry. And finally, we sat down. I said, "Hey, when I call you, I don't say hi. You want to work some tennis tomorrow at 3? So let's play. Let's play." And in a way, it reminds me of something Billie Jean King told Martina Navratilova when she was feeling very burnt out, and she said to Martina, "Look, do you feel when you go out there like you did when you were 10 years old, just starting to play?" She goes, "I'm not sure." She goes, "Well, you better figure out a way to find it, and if you can't, then you should quit. Because you need to find that energy, that joy you have, and just letting yourself play and enjoy and learn." That's what's so interesting about this game as a child. We just play it and learn it and have fun with it. And then I think adults get a little more, they get goal-focused and want to win and want to do better, and it can be a little much. And so just to kind of have that faith in oneself and enjoy it. Enjoy learning. Enjoy missing.
Let's talk about the solution. And the solution being, what are we going to do immediately after we make an unforced error? And, this is, maybe this is a little corny here, but, I've kind of listed five things that that I think have worked for me. And the first one is, I think you even referenced this a few minutes ago, is that, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some mild disappointment after you make an unforced error. I think that's a natural reaction, and I don't think you want to suppress that. But at the same time, you don't want to get so disappointed or so pissed off that it becomes, eventually an excuse to use, as you said, kind of building up a story of whatever the negative story is for that day. So, I don't have a problem with sort of having a mild reaction that this is not a cynical type of response, but it's more, okay, I need this to eventually learn how to change this mistake, meaning that I need to make this error that I just made to eventually get to where I want to go. And let me just go through these one by one, and then I want you to weigh in afterwards, Joel, on one or all of them, and then two, sort of evaluate, what really did happen right there. I mean, what was really the reason that I just made that unforced error? A lot of it could be physical, could be the spacing. You got too close to the ball, you weren't far enough away from the ball. You got too, mentally maybe you got too tight. You squeezed the racket way too tight, and the swing speed just slowed down to a crawl. I mean, I think you've got to be able to objectively evaluate after your little mild disappointment exactly what happened. And then I think you want to do, well, what do I want to try next time? And not that you have to sort of punish yourself into saying, well, I have to do this thing next time or else. It's more of a response of, well, what do I want to try next time? And what I like to do is, if I make an unforced error, I want to rehearse the positive thing of what I want to try next time a couple of times. Whether that's, if I've just missed a backhand volley, for example, I want to go through a little rehearsal of that stroke a couple of times. And then just the last thing is sort of, trust and be confident that you're on the improvement path. Be happy with that. And then just get ready to play the next point.
And I'll do that and do that all in about 25 seconds.
Or, maybe we can get so good at it we can kind of work this down to just, kind of a 3, 4, 5 second deal. I mean, really it's pretty simple, I think, to if you practice this. And this can't be something that you just sort of intellectualize and then all of a sudden you go out and play a match and go, okay, well, I'm going to try this little sequence. I think you've got to practice it. I think you've got to go out there and practice, and you've got to look for unforced errors, and you have to practice this sequence. What's your evaluation? What's your feedback on these kind of 5 little points here?
I love every one of these 5 points, and to me, if someone wanted to extract, I would really look a lot at number 2 and number 5. I would look at number 2 as kind of like the course correction. I mean, I just think of we're talking about tennis, and I think this is the stuff that airline pilots and astronauts do all the time, or surgeons, where you're just kind of these little course corrections. And number 2 is this course correction. Maybe it didn't quite turn my shoulders. Something very simple, because we can't be in a match, and we can't become too maniacal about all this technical stuff. We just have to know our little technical cues. I mean, the things I've learned most from when I've taken lessons are what's a technical cue or two that I can take? Not a tip, but a cue. And then number 5 is re-engaging in some of that positive energy. So number 5 is kind of obviously the back end of number 1, which is, messed it up, missed an overhead 2 feet long or whatever. And so number 5 is, we're back in the game. 2nd and 14, let's go. Or better yet, 2nd and 3. So I didn't get 10 yards, I got 7. I mean, just a way of constantly giving oneself the ways to move positive, the ways to move forwards. And that's what I think, from my study and conversations with pros of various levels, is the thing that makes people great competitors, is a constant sense of moving forward, positive. The story is going to work. Win or lose, the story will work for me.
One of the things I've watched, I don't know, I just been thinking about, I've just highlighted number 4, which is rehearse what you want to try twice. And I've noticed a lot on the pro tour that when one of the players misses a shot, that there'll be sort of this mild disappointment, but then there'll be this little sort of snap focus onto, well, here's what I want to do next time. And I see them. I'm thinking of Sharapova right now in terms of she'll miss a shot, and then she will, kind of as she does, she kind of turns her back to her opponent. She sort of walks back towards the back fence, and you can see her going through a swing a couple of times. And it's like trying to recapture, well, what's the feeling that I want on this swing the next time I'm going to play this shot? And I think a lot of players don't do this. I mean, I see a lot of players do just the opposite, where they miss a shot, and then they sort of mimic or kind of sarcastically show how they just screwed it up. And to me, that's kind of telling your brain, well, this is how I play that shot. As opposed to, I think you want to miss a shot, make an unforced error, and you want to do the opposite. You want to tell your brain, this is what we want. This is what I want to do next time. And I think if you don't do that, you're not. I mean, it's one thing to intellectualize it and tell yourself, here's what I want to do next time, but it's a whole other thing to give your body that kinesthetic feeling of, here's what I'm going to do next time.
Absolutely right, Brent. And I think it also gets this whole thing of energy. And as you said it, I thought to myself, well, we learn and we take lessons kind of with our head, because the learning environment with a teaching pro is very cognitive, very much in our head, and it's very analytical, and you learn about your shoulders and your hips. But once you get in the game, it's got to be more, your heart is there because it's pounding and there's pressure. And I think when I see people like Maria, who obviously play with tremendous intensity, they're looking to kind of calm themselves and also kind of get themselves in a nice emotional place. Okay, here's my good swing. Here's what I need to do. And it's important, though, for every player to have their ritual. I mean, we're not saying imitate Maria Sharapova. We're saying find your way of creating positive energy. I mean, there's someone we both play with who he sometimes slaps himself on his thigh and says babes,
Right.
And different people have different ways, but we all can tell, we all can see the ones who bring it positively, and you can smell it compared to those who bring it negatively.
Right, good. Okay, well, listen, man, I'm going to let you go. Appreciate your time today, Joel. Real quick, what's on your upcoming agenda?
Very exciting. In about a month, I'm going to be heading to Paris for working with Tennis Channel with the French Open.
Congratulations, that's great.
We've been having talks lately about what we want to do. They're going to be doing maybe some new and different things in Paris this year, and then right after that is Wimbledon. So the next couple of months are going to be pretty active. So very exciting.
Well, congratulations. Glad you're back in the men. You're going to be heading over to the French. That'll be a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to. I know you've got a blog in the works, and hoping that you can find some time to start posting to that.
Thanks. We'll be getting on that soon.
Okay, Joel. Thanks very much again.
Thanks.